quiet Georgia suburb put the spotlight back on OTF and one of Durk's closest affiliates, OTF Boona. From the church parking lot in Gwinnett County to the courtroom whispers tying it back to Chicago, the case mixes street rumors, old charges, and questions about whether this was a random move or a planned hit. In this breakdown, we'll piece together what really happened, who the victim was, and how it connects to Boona and OTF duct tape and execution. Lil Durk's affiliate Boona, real name Michael Golden, built his name as a Lamron BD, reppin' 300. His background already showed where he was headed. Arrested at 17 for a pole, 18 for an armed robbery, later caught with a machine gun. He was known as one of them ones in the streets. Even after Durk blew up and Atlanta became home base, Boona still moved like he was on the south side. By 2021, the pattern caught up. Reports say Boona hopped out an SRT Durango outside a mall and let off 4 people. A gunfight broke out. 3 got hit, including a 6-year-old kid. One of the targets, 19-year-old Jakava Harris, got foot but still fired back. Another, 19-year-old Deshaun Powell, got hit in the back, while 18-year-old Karanji Reese managed to escape without injury. Boona slid back into the SUV and dipped, but in the chaos he left his phone behind, a mistake that tied him straight to the scene. The 3 names from that mall all tied to MCF, also called Gizzy Gang. Money comes first. The one who fired back at Boona was Jakava Lil Man Harris, an Atlanta rapper. That lit a fuse. 3 months later, Durk's own crib in Atlanta got hit by home invaders, fired inside the house. A month after that, 19-year-old Mark Holland Jr., also from MCF, was. Word in the city was Mark had been one of the ones that slid on Durk's house, retaliation for Lil Man getting by Boona. MCF started collapsing after that. Lil Man went fed after a federal agent got during a car theft. Karanji Risa, who had walked away clean from the mall, later got booked for a nightclub case where 6 people got hit and 2. With Durk facing his own federal pressure, Atlanta turned into open season. Duty Low ended up robbed and one of Quando Rondo's people flexed his chain and watch on IG. Boona never moved like he was hiding behind Durk's. Durk even called it out in Monitoring Me. Boona a bug, he gon' get up with you. See, I pay him not to get rid of, making it clear what type of energy Boona carried. On July 22, 2025, that rep came back into focus. Around 7 a.m., neighbors saw cops surrounding a body on the street. A Hispanic male in his 20s was found. Residents told reporters they never heard screams or anything that morning. To them, it felt like a mystery. Somebody executed in silence. The victim was identified the next day as 28-year-old Oscar Alexis Cruz, a father of 1. Detectives pieced together what happened in the hours before his body was found. According to the arrest warrant signed August 7th, Boona drove out to Warrenville, about 40 minutes from downtown Atlanta. Between 1:30 and 3 a.m., police say he forced his way into Oscar's home, tied his hands with duct tape, demanded cash, ransacked the place, then multiple times. Oscar's body was later dumped 9 minutes away in a church parking lot. The charges stacked heavy: aggravated assault, home invasion, kidnapping, armed robbery, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Boona had already escaped Chicago for a fresh start in Atlanta, but without Durk's protection and money around him, he slid back into old habits. Now he's facing life, maybe even the penalty in Georgia for duct taping and executing a man. Oscar Alexis Cruz was 28, from Lawrenceville, known by family and friends as Oz. He was found around 6 a.m. in the parking lot of Canon United Methodist Church in Snellville after a passerby called 911. Police confirmed he had been and treated it as an isolated case, saying the church itself wasn't connected. His family described him as a devoted father who leaves behind a young son. They set up a fundraiser to cover funeral costs. There's nothing official in the record tying Oscar to gangs or street crews. No public info about immigration status, work, or any kind of criminal history. All that's known for sure is he was a young father who ended up in a quiet suburb. So far, there's no documented connection between Oscar and OTF or Boona in official reports. Police named him as the victim but haven't named suspects or motives. Local news outlets reported his death and identity, but didn't go beyond that. The details about duct tape and multiple have mostly come from blogs and online chatter, not confirmed by police statements. Boona's name has been floated online, but until court filings or warrants drop, it's rumor. On the street side, there's been no sign of retaliation in Georgia or Chicago over Oscar's. Police have said it looks isolated, and there hasn't been credible news about local crews turning it into a back and forth. Nothing official points to it being tied to OTF business either. As it stands, it looks like a one-off suburban homicide, and until more paperwork comes out, there's no clear link to larger street politics. However, Durk's name was always the engine. He turned into a multimillionaire off music, right next to guys like Chief Keef and G Herbo, while most of the crew around him never built their own lane. Boona wasn't dropping hits. He was known for being violent. Durk even said it in his lyrics. Without Durk's bag funding the circle, a lot of them were just regular dudes with bodies on their record but no other value. When Durk caught his own federal case, all the chaos his circle stirred up in Atlanta, home invasions, robberies, suddenly had no money behind it, and that's when everything started to collapse. Without Durk around, the people in his circle started moving reckless. Nobody knows exactly what Boona was chasing that night. Could have been weed, jewelry, or something else he thought was in the crib. The warrant just lays out what police believe. He broke in, duct-taped Oscar Cruz, threatened him, searched the house, then executed him before leaving the body in a church lot. A neighbor came across it at 6 in the morning. It shows the drop from being next to a multimillionaire, on stages, flying city to city, to ending up in a crash-out situation with no money for a high-powered defense. Durk had the type of lawyers like Drew Findling on call, the same ones big names like Young Thug used. Boona doesn't. Without that machine behind him, he's just Boona, facing everything alone. It's the difference between someone like Duty Low, who got robbed, but kept it moving because he still got motion, and someone like Boona, who reverted to violent moves with nothing left to lose. That's the reality now. Boona's name been floating around heavy. He's accused of catching a body in a real gruesome way, but this ain't the first time his name hit the news. A couple years back, he got locked up for a parking lot in Georgia where a bunch of innocent bystanders got hit. That case made headlines statewide, but somehow he ended up beating the charges. What's wild is reports said his phone and ID were found at the scene, and once cops got in his phone, a lot of that info allegedly tied into the O Block 6 case, the same one that ended with convictions in the FBG duck. So it's not just random. Everything's connected, and it shows the Fed's been on his heels for a minute. Being tied to Durk only made the spotlight hotter. Durk himself still got that open case and investigators sitting on thousands of files. Anybody in his circle stays under a microscope. For Boona already having a prior case, the question is why risk it again? This ain't just a after some back and forth. The current allegations point to a straight-up hit carried out with intent. That's why it's got people shook, wondering who he might have been moving for and what the play really was. The whole thing looks like a bigger puzzle, with too many pieces linking back to major names in Chicago and beyond. Police haven't dropped full details yet, but the way it's being painted, Boona's situation could open up a lot more than just another headline. But when Gwinnett County Police got called out to a church after a body was found behind the building, it's pretty much over. The victim was identified as 30-year-old Oscar Cruz, known in the streets as Oz or Eyes. Reports say he'd been kidnapped multiple times and then dumped right there by the church groundskeeper's area. His family later confirmed the body. The whole scene had investigators and crime techs combing through evidence, but off the rip it looked sloppy. Dropping a body behind a church in broad daylight territory ain't low-key at all. Groundskeepers and church staff were guaranteed to find him, so it put a fast spotlight on whoever carried it out. Detectives made it clear they believed it was an isolated hit, not some random act, but it shook up the community heavy. When loyalty looks like Rico, with Boona catching a fresh kidnapping case, it only adds more pressure on Durk's image while he's already sitting on a federal for hire. Prosecutors been framing OTF as more than a rap label, calling it an enterprise, and every new arrest around him just makes that look stronger. That hurts Durk's brand moves. Cities and civic groups already distanced themselves after his arrest last year, and his foundation work slowed up too. Touring is basically right now since Durk's in custody waiting on trial. No promoters locking in arenas when the main artist can't move, but musically, the stream's still going crazy. His last project dropped from jail and still debuted high, showing the fan base ain't switching up. That's why the label keeps pushing. There's too much money tied to his catalog. They even threw up big bond money to try to get him home, proof the industry's still standing behind him. When it comes to affiliates like Boona, Durk usually keeps quiet during open cases, but he has shown loyalty before. He publicly backed Muop when he was fighting the Duck case, showing he rides for his day ones. At the same time, his team stays on the OTF is family, not a gang line. That's the defense posture, so co-signing somebody facing duct tape and 17 ain't smart while the Fed's trying to prove enterprise. Most likely, you'll see silence on Boona's case publicly, even if behind the scenes Durk still shows love. For the industry, it breaks down like this. No civic or corporate endorsements, touring revenue is stalled, streaming numbers remain strong, and the label keeps him relevant while avoiding public ties to whatever his affiliates get entangled in. The Feds already put real heat on the O-Block side with the FBG Duck case. 6 O-Block members, Charles C. Murda Liggins, Kenneth Kenny Mac Robertson, Christopher C. Thang Thomas, Marcus Muop Smart, Carlos Los Offord, and Ralph Turpin, got found guilty in federal court in aid of racketeering, Vicar, a charge that carries mandatory life. Prosecutors said the crew was part of an organized BD operation that used music and social media to boost the brand while sliding on ops. The jury agreed after a 3-month trial. That verdict showed the blueprint. Treat the set like an enterprise. Tie the move to the gang and go federal so sentences stick. In court, the government leaned on surveillance and forensics, not rumors. Cameras caught members leaving Parkway Gardens and moving in 2 cars. A Chrysler 300 later seized had a casing in the windshield well that matched scene evidence. Prosecutors also pointed to videos and posts boosting the hit, content the jury heard to map out motive and hierarchy. It wasn't just lyrics on trial, it was timelines, cars, shells, and on-camera movements lining up with the Get Back narrative. On top of that, Durk himself is fighting a separate federal case in LA tied to the 2022 Beverly Grove gas station ambush where Quando Rondo's cousin Lul Pob, Xavier Robinson, He was arrested in Florida in October 2024 and later hit in a superseding indictment in the Central District of California for an alleged for-hire conspiracy. He's pled not guilty, the government isn't seeking, and the trial was pushed into 2025 after defense moves to dismiss. Whatever fans think, that's the current status. Federal case pending, no conviction. The bigger pattern around OTF's orbit is how investigators build these cases. They've shown they'll use enterprise theories, RICO/Vicar Energy, pull phone data and socials, and stitch it to physical evidence. Even away from Chicago, that playbook shows up, like the 2021 Cumberland Mall in Metro Atlanta, where Michael OTF Boona Golden was ID'd after cops recovered a phone dropped at the scene and worked it back through warrants and online activity. That's the kind of digital breadcrumb trail the feds and locals keep riding to turn street buzz into federal paperwork. Durk's older Atlanta case, the 2019 Varsity, was dropped in 2022, but with the O-Block convictions and a live federal case on Durk, the pressure around the brand hasn't let up. The takeaway for drill fans is simple. Prosecutors are treating crews like enterprises, using Cam's phone's posts to prove hierarchy and motive, and when they file it federal, the time hits different. Chicago already been under the microscope since the drill scene blew up. Every high-profile case, Von's in Atlanta, Muop and the O-Block 6 trial, Rondo and C-Day's decades-long sentences, feeds the narrative that this isn't just music, but an ongoing cycle of violence. For Durk, who made it to the top of the industry, the challenge has always been separating the business from the street politics. But every time another affiliate like Boona gets caught in something this heavy, it drags the brand right back into the headlines for all the wrong reasons. OTF as a whole still moves like a family, but that loyalty cuts both ways. Durk has stood behind his guys in public before, posting support for members locked up, but that same loyalty fuels the picture prosecutors are painting. That OTF is more than music, it's an organization. Now with Boona allegedly snatching a man in Georgia, the story stretches beyond Chicago. It shows how the street politics bleed into other states where OTF affiliates are moving. Atlanta already played a big role in Durk's career. He fought charges there before. Vaughn was there. And now Boona's case is unfolding just outside the city. The big question is how long Durk and OTF can keep the music machine running under all this heat. He's still charting, still pulling millions of streams, but touring is while he sits in custody, and civic organizations already started cutting ties after his arrest. For the fans, the music remains the focus, but for the feds, every new arrest is another piece of evidence that OTF is what they say it is, an enterprise built on more than rap. Oscar Cruz's Gwinnett County might look like an isolated local homicide on paper, but tied to an OTF affiliate, it becomes part of a much bigger story. From Parkway Gardens to Atlanta suburbs to federal courtrooms in California, Durk and OTF stay in the middle of it all. And as cases stack up, the line between rap success and street consequences gets harder to separate. Chicago been the heart of drill, and the numbers prove why. Even with down from the peak years, the city still sees hundreds of every year. In 2024, Chicago logged around 570 homicides, better than the pandemic highs, but still more than most cities its size. By mid-2025, homicides in dropped by about a third, the lowest levels in years. That's progress, but the violence is still part of daily life in the South and West sides. Drill rap came straight out those blocks. Chief Keef lit the fire, and names like Lil Durk, King Von, and FBG Duck kept it alive. But this wasn't just rap, it was reality. O-Block versus Tookaville became the backdrop, and Duck's in 2020 turned into a federal case where 6 O-Block members got life. Prosecutors even played music and pulled social posts to frame the gang wars as organized crime. Plenty of rappers ended up casualties of the same streets they rapped about. Lil Jojo got gunned down at 18 after taunting Chief Keef and the BDS. FBG Duck was in the Gold Coast shopping district, one of the richest parts of the city, in broad daylight. King Yella got twice while filming an anti-violence video, proof that even when trying to flip the script, the politics followed. For fans, drill music feels authentic because it comes straight from the chaos outside those housing projects and corners. But that same authenticity is what makes the cops and feds treat it like evidence. Lyrics, live videos, and even Instagram posts get pulled into indictments. The streets fuel the music, and the music feeds right back into the streets until it ends with a body or a court date. Chicago's violence may be trending down, but in drill culture, the numbers don't erase the legacy. Every stat hides the reality that the music and the are still tied together, and that cycle hasn't been broken. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click on a video on either side to watch a video similar to this one.